G'day, welcome to a quick video about repairing magazine tubes in tube-fed 22 rimfire rifles. Now this is my Noble Model 275. I've got another video about this. It's quite an unusual rifle, but I've got another video just generally about this rifle when I got it. So if you're interested, you can watch that. But when I got it, I had to kind of clean it up, and one thing that was wrong with it was the magazine tube was a bit jammed, and I was reluctant to pull it apart because I was afraid of damaging it. So I simply just degreased the inside and used a rod to clean it out, and actually got it working quite well. That's it. So I used it for a little while, and then it started playing up, and the follow was getting jammed inside the magazine. So I was forced to actually dismantle it to see what the hell was going on. So I actually did dismantle it. I was very careful about doing it because the last thing I wanted to do was to damage this brass tube. Now we should just have a quick look at the anatomy of a 22 magazine tube. If you haven't got any experience with these, I've only actually, despite shooting for about 40 years, I've only just had a tube-fed magazine rifle in the last few years. This is my little Remington Model 12 that I got a few years ago. I do have a video up about this if you're interested in the rifle specifically. But if you're familiar with centerfire tube-fed magazine rifles, generally lever actions are obviously the most common type. Most of them will have what's called a King's Gate, which is the little spring-loaded thing on the side. And lo and behold, here's one. I just went and drove this out of my gun safe. So this is a original Winchester model 1894, made in 1909, and you can see it's got this spring-loaded gate. It's called a King's Gate or a King's Patent because it was designed by a guy called King. And in these type of centerfire rifles, the magazine is just a simple tube. So it has a simple tube, it has a spring in it, and then a little follower, so the cartridges just push the spring up, and then there's something in the mechanism that just holds them in place and then feeds them through individually. In a rimfire rifle, you don't tend to see King's Gate. I'm not sure whether there's ever been one. I can't recall one. But they tend to have more of a complex magazine tube made up of two parts. So it will generally be latched on one end. Now this one you can see has a little spring-loaded, see that? Little spring-loaded thing which just fits. It's actually the tube. You can see this is interesting. You could actually just, if you had to replace this tube or if you lost this bit, you could replace it with a tube simply with a pin like the Noble, which just rotates in place, because the actual outer magazine tube itself actually does have that little slot type of thing. But you can, generally what you do is you just push the button and then it just clicks in like that. So the outer part of the magazine tube is generally steel, and it has this little loading port there. So obviously that's 22 long rifle size. 22 Magnum one will be bigger, and some very early rifles at 22 short only are only just going to have a little 22 short size one in it. But in most rifles the actual magazine tube is fixed to the rifle and doesn't move the outer magazine tube. These two rifles are unusual in that they're both designs, and they're one of the very few designs where the magazine tube actually moves with the action. So in this case, as you pump it, the magazine tube goes back and forth, and in the noble, as you run the lever, the magazine tube goes back and forth. But as I said, like 99% of tube-fed 22 rifles, the magazine will stay in place. So yeah, so they'll always have some sort of cap on the end that you can disengage and pull off if you've got a spare hand. Let's have a look here. There we go. Now they tend to make the inside out of brass. I think that's because brass has actually a lower coefficient of friction, so as far as sliding it in and out, and also it's more resistant to corrosion, which is why they use it on ships and stuff, compared to steel. So if you had a steel one in a steel tube and then you didn't clean and oil it properly, there'd be a high possibility of it actually rusting in place. So I think that's probably why they use brass for this. But anyway, this is more of a typical magazine tube. So it'll have an end on it here, and so it'll either have a little latch like this one, or in a lot of cases, like this other one, it'll just be a turn knurl sort of thing, so you can grab it, and the pin actually acts to retain it in the slot by just rotating it by about 90 degrees or 45 degrees. But again, so this one would come apart exactly the same. You can see one end's crimped slightly. We'll get that to focus hopefully. See how that's kind of crimped, so that follower has a bigger diameter of the crimp at the back, so the follower will just come out a certain way but not come out any further. This other one is also crimped. It's for the same reason. Now, if you get a rifle where this magazine tube is either dented, damaged, bent or missing, it's not the end of the world because the parts are available. You can buy this magazine tubing from Brownells. I assume I've never done it, but I assume one end is actually already crimped, and then it's probably quite long, so you just have to cut the length to size. So you either do that with a hacksaw or possibly a little, copper pipe cutter, little wheel ones that you turn around that cut the pipe. So yeah, so this one works perfectly, so I'm not going to dismantle it, but if I wanted to dismantle, it's the same thing. It's just got that little pin, which also looks like about 332. This one's actually slightly loose, but yeah, it's kind of held in place. So, it's got pressure from the spring on it. So yeah, so even if you had a magazine tube that was missing, Brownells actually have magazine tube kits, including the tubes, springs, followers, pins, everything available for most rifles. To remove this, I didn't actually film it because I was kind of a bit nervous about doing it in the first place. It simply had a pin. There's the catch that goes in the magazine there, which has a pinhole through it. You can see where the spring nests on the end. And then there's the pin. The pin also was actually quite rusty and, as you can see, sort of bent. The pin actually sticks out one side, and that's what actually indexes in the little slot, in that little slot in the outer magazine tube. So, and then having this unusual follower, which I won't go into it now. If you're interested in why this is unusual, go back and watch my video on the rifle itself. But anyway, that's the other end of the follower. So that bit is trapped inside the tube, and that's the bit that sticks out and acts as to push the cartridge out and acts as an ejector. So you can see the other bit where the spring nests. So the more observant of you might notice a slight problem with this magazine spring. This is what it was like as I took it out of the tube. Pulled it out of the tube, it just fell to pieces. It was rusty. You see the rust there. You see that bit there, so rusty that it's just lost its temper and concertina, and there was actually quite a few other even smaller fragments. So the spring's just rusted through. So yeah, so I think it was obviously rusty before I did use water and degreaser to clean it out. That probably might have just finished it off. But yeah, it clearly needs replacing. So what I need to do with this rifle is I need to replace this pin, obviously, because as you can see it's pretty buggered, and get a new magazine spring. Now Brownells actually has 22 magazine springs. I'm hoping this is just a standard size. It probably is, because all it just has to nest on that little bit there, and it has to nest on a little bit there, and then I can put it in and replace the pin. Now measuring that tube, well actually I measured the hole, measuring the hole in this here. It's measured, I can't quite remember the metric or the decimal size, but it actually worked out to be exactly 332 inch, which is a standard imperial size. It's a good thing about American rifles, a lot of the stuff is standard imperial size. So, I mean, I could have turned one up in the lathe to try to get it whatever, but the easiest way was just to get a drill bit. So I actually I've got a box of old drill bits that I got from second-hand shops and whatever. I went through there with a measuring device, and lo and behold I found a 332 drill bit. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the length of that, and then I'm going to just cut the end off this drill bit to make a new pin like that. And then I haven't actually ordered the spring yet. I'll have to get it from the States, from Brownells, so that might take, depending on when I order some other stuff, because the postage, I always order a whole heap of things together when I order from Brownells. That might take a month or two. Now if you have to dismantle one of these magazine tubes, just remember that brass is much softer than steel, so you've got to make sure you don't damage anything. So I was really quite nervous when I did this one, because the pin was actually was sort of rusted in, it was quite tight. But all I did was, if we pretend that this is the one, I just kind of got it on this polypropylene block, held it right on the edge like that, so the tube was supported through its whole length. I put something else on up this end so that I didn't have to use two hands to hold it. I mean, you could actually even put a bit of tape, put a bit of duct tape or something across there just to hold it in place. And then I just tapped on the, took a fair bit of tapping, but I got a punch that was just smaller than the pin, but you know, big enough it wasn't going to bend, and then just gave it a bit of a whack, and I got it started and managed to tap it out without damaging that. So if you look at this pin is just a loose fit. Oops, where are we here? The pin is a loose fit in that hole. It's a loose fit in both sides, but doesn't seem, the holes don't. Oh, there we go. So yeah, so it's sort of a loose fit in there. Not that loose, it's kind of, and this bit here, it feels like it's an interference fit. So an interference fit in that. So when I punch it through that, hopefully it will. I'll double check the diameters, but it should just be able to knock it through, and it should hold in place. I've received my new magazine springs from Brownells. Now you can get these, you can buy a single one, which are about $4 I think, US, $3 something. But you can buy 3 for $9. Oh yeah, I've got some spares then, because either I might find a two-fed rifle that's got. I'm always on the lookout for cheap guns that need repairs, that need repairing, or possibly someone else might have one that needs one repaired. They're actually fairly long, these. I reckon they're probably 26 inches. So they're obviously made for sort of the longest magazine tube. So what you need to do generally is get your magazine tube, measure it, and then what it's recommended to do is to actually cut your spring about another third as long again. So your spring is the length of the magazine tube plus a third. And then you try it at that, and most rifles are going to have, you know, somewhere where there's going to be literature that will tell you how many rounds they're supposed to hold, the magazine's supposed to hold. So then you can generally, you know, try it and make sure it can hold that. If the spring's a bit too long such that it won't hold that capacity, well then you can pull it apart again and just cut a little tiny bit off, put it back together and try that. But the first thing you're going to do is go and get the little accessories that go on either end and check that they're going to fit before I actually go and get the tube. So here's the little a funny little follower thing that goes in the rifle. So I mean, that's it's a loose slide fit on that, but as I said, everything's inside the magazine, so it can't come apart. So that should be all right like that. If you wanted to, you possibly could just twist this, make this diameter of the end loop a little bit tighter if you want it to actually grip on the end there. But you need to have it so that, see how it nests as the spring's compressed, it nests on there. So it has to be loose enough to be able to do that, because that's what's going to happen inside the magazine. It's going to end up like that when it's fully compressed. All right, I'll go and get the other bit. Right, here's the other end. So again, that should work fine. That just goes on there like that. So what we need to do is put this up here. So there we go. So we get that about level there. Now, I might just have to get a tape measure and we'll decide where to cut that spring. So that magazine tube is about 465 millimeters. So we'll do 465 by 1.333. So about 620 we want. Righto. Alright, so that's about there. So we'll just cut that off there. Wasn't too hard to do. Alright, so now we've got our spring that's about a third longer than our tube. So what we will do is we'll just put that bit in there. Okay, I managed to get that in. Yeah, it just seems like this part here where the holes are punched is actually slightly small, a bit tight, slightly smaller diameter. Once I got it past there, then it's set down. So we got that down there. So we can now put the spring in there. Now obviously what's going to happen now is it's going to get to the end. We'll give it a twist to make sure it kind of seats on that bit there. So what we've got to do now is make sure we've got our, and I'm probably, oh now we've got the problem with this bloody spring. Watch these springs, they kind of just tangle very easily. No matter how careful you are. This one, because it's only a short length, I think it's the easiest way to get it out is just to go like that until it comes out. Right. Alright, so I've got my little, this bit here. And I've got my little, that bit there. So what I have to do, I'm going to do this off camera because it's going to be difficult because I've got to kind of use 3 hands to shove this down, put the end in and get that pin in. So I'll just do that. Alright, so here we go. I've actually pushed that in and got that pin in there. It wasn't too hard because this pin's actually a slide fit in there. If you look at that, you see that? It's actually a little bit small. I initially thought I could maybe just Loctite it in place, and it's under tension all the time anyway, but you know, there is the potential I might lose that pin and the whole thing will come apart. So what I'm going to do when I get a chance is I'll, my lathe's actually having a bit of maintenance at the moment. I need to finish fixing it up, but when the lathe's going again, I'll just turn up another pin, probably a thou bigger than this one, and then it's going to have, this is actually really quite smooth being an end of a drill bit. You know, my pin's going to have a few tiny machining marks, which is going to mean I should be able to tap it in and it'll just stay tight. Anyway, we've got that back together again. There's that there. So it's nice and smooth now compared to what it was. I don't think we're going to have any problem with that coming out. So let's try putting it in with the cleaning rod. So that's pretty well, that spring's pretty well fully compressed now. And there we go, out it comes, smooth as. Alright, so now I guess we got to, we might try some dummy rounds first. Alright, I've got some dummy rounds here. Alright, I've now put 13 dummy rounds in here, and I haven't got to the end of the spring yet, but I've run out of dummy rounds, so I might have to get a couple of normal cartridges, which is a bit of a problem because I've got to kind of hold this in place and go and get into my ammo, unlock my ammo cupboard. Alright, let's see, I've got a bit of real ammo now, let's see if we can fit 14. So theoretically it's supposed to hold 15. So, okay, so, oops. So there's 14 in there, and it won't take the 15th one. Now, so I've got a choice now. I could cut the, so let's let them all out. There they all are. I could cut the spring a bit shorter and keep trying till I get 15 in there. But to be honest, I'm rarely going to ever put 15 in there, and I can do it at a later stage. So, and obviously the more spring tension you got, the more reliable it's going to be. So I'm probably reasonably happy. I tend to only load 10 in there at a time, so 14 is probably good enough for me. So I think I'll just leave it as it is for now. And anyway, let's put it in the rifle. Alright, so we've got 12 little plastic training rounds in here now, so let's see how this goes. There we go. Obviously they don't cycle quite as well as proper cartridges do, but And there we can see the final, with the final round, you've got that magazine follower coming in and popping out the last one. And there we go. So as you can see, my little pin's still a little bit long. But as I said, I think I'm going to replace that with another one, so I'll just leave that for now. But at least it works. If I want to shoot it now, I can.
Right, now I'm going to try some 22 shorts. Would fit more, but I don't have any more. No problem. That concludes the video about repairing magazine tubes in a tube-fed 22 rifle. Now there's just a few comments I want to make before we finish. If you go back and watch the video that I did of a review of that Noble 275 rifle, I was loading it with long rifle cartridges. They were loading in okay and it was cycling okay, but when I tried to load shorts in, it just wouldn't load them. I could get 3 or 4 in and that was about it. And they were just hanging up in the magazine, they just wouldn't go in, and I assumed it was a problem with the rifle itself. And then of course the magazine just stopped working completely, and I've replaced the spring, as you'll see in this video. Now, in that footage at the end where I went out to the range and tried the rifle out, as soon as I loaded the first lot of long rifles into the magazine, I could tell straight away it was a big improvement. They just slid straight in. You know, when you put the tube down there, instead of having to twiddle it and whittle, you know, get it to go down, it was just like you'd feel it, give it a little twiddle, and then it would just go all the way down, and then you lock it. So I could tell in retrospect that even before the long rifle cartridge weren't loading well, and that's why I thought, well, I'll try it with shorts. Because I initially thought it was a problem with rifles, why it wouldn't feed shorts, even though it was marked for shorts. And it was the same thing. I put those 13 or 14 shorts in the magazine and pushed the tube down, and it just slid straight in as you saw. So that makes me think that there's probably a lot of tube-fed 22 rifles out there that kind of are okay. You know, people are using them and shooting them, and you put your cartridges in and you wiggle the magazine and as you put it down and you get it to work. But it could be that the magazine springs in those rifles are a little bit rusty, not as strong as they were. The tube's probably a bit dirty. So unless your rifle is loading really super smoothly, for a few dollars for a magazine spring, I would suggest you get a new spring, pull your magazine apart, give it a good clean and put a new spring in, and you'll probably find, just like I did, a huge improvement. Anyway, if you like this sort of content, I try to put up videos as often as I can, as long as I can find something interesting to put up. Please push the subscribe button and push the like button. And until next time, thanks for watching.